I don't know if I should tell you this. It's so effed up. It's only the internet, right? What the hell? All right, we're going in. Our ancestors drew tiny figures and scenes on the walls of caves using pigments and dyes from plants, charcoal, marrow, and blood. They painted with feathers, blew through hollow bones, smeared with their fingertips, and carved into stone. Now, we carry in our pockets fantastic machines with capabilities that would have seemed like science fiction only a few decades ago. Through the ages, we venture into the darkness, beyond the ring of the firelight, across the plains, through forests and over peaks, and we return, eager to share with our family, our tribe, our village, where we have been, what we have seen, and what we have done. We humans have evolved into storytellers. Maybe that's why we're so obsessed with cameras. This is a Leica M6, and it's my favorite camera. Now, I don't mean all Leica M6s as in that model is my favorite camera. I just mean this particular camera, this very one in my hands, is my favorite camera of all time. Now, this video isn't going to be strictly a review, although I'm definitely going to give you my opinions and tell you some details. If you're looking for a review, I'm going to suggest you go to Matt Day's channel. He's kind of the GOAT. Analog Insights does an awesome job. I'll put those links below. I'm not going to give you a formal review. Instead, I'm going to tell you about some of the adventures me and this camera have been on, some of the places we've been. I'm going to show you some of the pictures that I captured along the way, and maybe give you a few anecdotes and share some experience and about why I love this camera so much. This was given to me in 2015 by a dude named Mark Twight. And Mark's, let's be honest, a little famous in certain circles. We met on the internet and we just kind of started a conversation. And lo and behold, one day he declared that he was going to give me this camera. And he did. Mark and I have both told this story, and we told it together on his podcast. I'll put that link below. I wrote about it. I think he wrote a little bit about it. So I'm not going to go into that history here. Although, if you're interested in such things, check it out. It's pretty cool. Mark is definitely someone who has been beyond the ring of the campfire light, and he's returned to tell what he's seen and what he's done, things that only a small group of humans have ever seen or done. And in a few cases, Mark's the only one in the history of the human race who's ever done those things. So for me, this camera carries that weight, and it represents just a staggering act of generosity and a challenge to go further, push harder, be better than I was yesterday, and to return and tell you about it. Now, the M6 is a rangefinder. Do you know what a rangefinder is? It's not an SLR. So you're not looking through the lens. You look through this little window over here. It's got a focus patch. You focus here. The patch moves. It tells you when you're in focus. That's how they work. It's very different. I'd never used a rangefinder before. The controls are very basic. You've got shutter. You've got the ISO, which you will set when you put the film in, and then you've got the aperture on the lens. And that's it. What else do you need? It's a center-weighted meter. When you see both red arrows, bingo! It's a simple, plain, elegant photographic machine. The cool thing about the M6 is it's all mechanical. You don't need a battery. Now there is a battery for the meter. You don't need the battery to operate the camera. Now, when Mark said he was going to give me the camera, He said, you can have the body, but you're gonna have to get your own damn lens. That's fair to me. And as you know, there's a lot of different lenses with the M mount. The Leica lenses, of course, being the most premium and the best. You can get Voigtlander lenses. You can kind of split the difference and get Zeiss lenses. I wanted a Leica lens. I chose to get a 50mm Summicron, which is an f2. I like the 50mm focal length, and I shoot a lot of portraits, and I thought, well, this isn't too wide, it's not too long. I should be able to capture portraits fairly reasonably with this. And I have, although there was a learning curve at first. I've gotten better. I've gotten better with this darn rangefinder and with focusing. We'll get into that. I was so stoked that first roll of film that I put in, and I was just like almost shaking with anticipation. I had my lens, I had the camera, and let's look at some shots. Okay, this is the very first shot with the M6. Every time I get a new camera, I take a picture of our dog Charity, and she doesn't like to be photographed, but tough. And here's some landscapes. This is me just moving around, experimenting. Ooh, underexposed. Oh, correct exposure. I am so used to shooting video, and I hadn't shot film in so long. The kind of rule with video always is you want to protect the highlights so you're underexposing. Well, that's the wrong thing to do with film, and it took me a little while to learn that. I underexposed, more shots than I wish I had. But now, I realize I'm really comfortable even overexposing it or just kind of pushing things. You can go hot. Film is awesome. It'll hold those highlights. So this is just kind of a collection of, me just running as many rolls of film as I possibly can through the camera, trying to get comfortable with it, trying to learn, trying to see what this tool can do. All over LA, Alaska, different places I'm traveling. That's my wife Danielle. On top of a parking garage in Hollywood. Hey, there's Lee Marvin. There's Charity. She doesn't like the camera. Look at that look. There's an old couch. Downtown Anchorage. Ooh, slow shutter in Miami. Hey, look, I'm back there behind the bar. This is Cine Still, somewhere in northern Washington. Cine Still film. Dude with a banjo. Chinatown, LA. Little street action. Dude, love these night Chinatown Kodak photos. The coffee cup. The lone palm tree somewhere in the desert. Now, I chose the 50mm because I love to shoot portraits, and that's mainly what I wanted to do. Right away, I came to love that crazy Leica space flare. There's Bruce Lee in Chinatown. Oh, really stoked to have nailed the focus on this spider under a bridge. And there's a desert landscape, little flare. So ever since I got the M6, it has been my go-to camera, my take everywhere camera, and I don't see that changing. I won't always take a digital camera when I go on a job somewhere, but I always take the M6. And very quickly, you're going to see in some of the stories coming up, it became oftentimes the only camera I would take on, a multi-week expeditions or trips. It's always in the bag, always have, a dozen rolls of film on hand, hopefully. If you want to get into shooting film, the thing I recommend is just run as many rolls through that thing as you can. You got to get used to it. You got to get the reps in, and you've got to know what kind of film you like, and then how the film will react in all these different settings. There's Todd and I climbing in the needles. Having never used a rangefinder before, I definitely struggled in the beginning. I've gotten better. Sometimes it really hurts. Ouch! Oh, now this is Antti. He is a former Finnish Special Forces operator. Now he's a mountain climber and a guide. He's summited Everest, and just a super strong dude and awesome. And I'm so bummed I missed that shot. Sometimes it's just silly, like there I obviously was focusing on the background. A lot of times I'm trying to get the camera as close to people as possible so I can get that shallow depth of field and that bokeh in the background. And I just struggled with the rangefinder, and I missed a lot early on. I came to believe that perhaps the camera or the lens were not properly calibrated. I think we'll get into that later. After I'd had the M6 for, I don't know, a year or two, I can't really even remember now, this mysterious package showed up in the mail one day, and It was this guy. And this is a Voigtlander 15 millimeter. I think it's an f 4.5 is where it starts, goes down to 22. Mark sent me this. The note that accompanied it said something about, you know, maybe you'll like this, Ben. It's a little too funhouse for me. So I have, I've used this guy quite a lot. Here's some shots. Now the 15 is not an everyday lens, but in the right conditions, it's awesome. This is a site in Portugal. I went slow shutter and spun it. This is Spain, I believe. This is a cabin in Idaho. Look at that old car. Train station in Barcelona. There's a castle. 15 millimeters. It just works in some of these spots. Okay, this is a cabin up by Nome, 15 millimeters, and then I spun 180 degrees, and there's this cross directly in front of it. I'm standing in the same spot. I just flipped 180, 180. Kind of creepy. This place is totally haunted, and here's the interior. 15 millimeters, awesome lens. Thanks for the camera and the lens, Mark. Thank you. I do a lot of different kinds of photography, but my favorite thing to shoot is people. Okay, let's have some portraits. There's a portrait. Boom. Boom. I love to photograph people. That's my favorite thing. And so that's, like I said before, that's why I got the 50 millimeter. I want to photograph people. People on film. So here's some of my favorite portraits. There's my buddy Mike rocking out. There's Danny, my wife. Oh, Ron in the morning sun. Danny having coffee. There's my buddy Seth. There's Bonnie. I could shoot portraits all day. If I only ever shot portraits, I'd be totally happy. There's my buddy Amir. There's Mike again. There's Mike Dowdy of the 90s band Soul Coughing. These are all 50 millimeter. I've gotten better at the focusing, better at the close focusing. I think my camera's actually calibrated now. Portraits all day, folks, all day. Look at that flare, look at that Leica flare. Oh, that's a 15 millimeter. There's a 50. Here's my neighbor, Aaron. What a cool guy. There's Ron, another cool guy. There's Danny in the Bahamas. Okay, I had to make this dude smile. Totally awesome. There's Christina in Idaho, badass marathon runner and farmer. There's my buddy Seth. I invited him over, told him to bring a red Speedo and a case of beer. We're taking pictures in my pool. That's portrait 400. Yeah. There's a self-portrait, Death Valley. I went to Death Valley in 2016 with 3 buddies, and we camped, and we got caught in a dust storm. Now, this dust storm wreaked havoc on the digital cameras, and I was shooting video with an A7S II, and the very next week, I ended up going to the Amazon for a job, and the minute I arrived, my A7S II, which I was going to use to film this work trip, totally died, and I can only attribute that to the sand damage. But my M6, which I shot a whole roll of film in the middle of this dust storm, sandstorm, whatever the hell it was fine. Came out unscathed. Now the film's a little scratched up in some places, but I really can't believe how well it held up. These M6s are very, very tough. I take the darn thing everywhere, and I'm not afraid to pull it out and use it in some gnarly weather. Maybe not a full-on rainstorm, but the darn thing is tough. In 2017, I got a pretty cool job just being a regular old camera guy on this show about a bunch of YouTube influencers trying to climb a mountain in Peru. So off we went. You're going to see a lot of street shots and shots of locals in the town of Huaraz, which is kind of the jumping off point to the Peruvian Andes if you want to climb a mountain or something. And we spent about a week in Huaraz filming, acclimatizing, that kind of thing. This is a dream situation for me. I would get up very early, about sunrise, and walk the streets and shoot before I had to work. And then at the end of the day, we would wrap. I would hand my camera to the assistant camera people, and I would head out into the city and hike around and shoot as much as I could with my M6. Took a bunch of HP5, had some Portra, had some Cine Still. I had several days where my job was just go out into the city and shoot landscapes and shoot B-roll and shoot time lapses. This is a dream situation for me. I had a guide with me, I had a driver, and I did a lot of street shooting and shooting time lapses, and then whoever I encountered on the street, I would try and take their portrait. Shooting pretty much all 50mm in the city. There's a Cine Still landscape of the city. I think that's Huascarán in the background. It's a cool old car. That's my friend Allie, who is a sound mixer. More Cine Still. And that's dusk high up in the town. After a week in Huaraz, it was time to head up to the higher altitude base camp for the actual climb. And this was going to be at 14,000 feet up a valley. So we started at this staging area, and it was going to be about a 10-mile hike up. But first, I was just hanging out in this meadow, and these are some of the local porters who are going to haul a bunch of the production gear up to base camp on their mules. Everybody's kind of staging. It's like a big circus. I'm just walking around taking portraits of the locals. Suddenly, the meter on my M6 is no longer working. So I look down at my camera wondering why the meter's not working, and I start to examine it, and I notice right here on the front is the battery cover. The batteries operate the meter. It's a little round thing that screws off. It looks like this. There's the batteries. There's the cover. That's what it looks like without it. Somehow, while I'm shooting these locals, the battery cover had come unscrewed and was missing. And I'm like, crap. And we're actually minutes from starting up the trail, and I gotta go because I gotta film people. I'm searching around on the ground, trying to retrace my steps, trying to find this. Half of it's black, half of it's pretty shiny. So I'm like, well, let's just hope the shiny side is sticking up and I can find this thing. And there's like, mule crap and dirt and grass, and I can't find the darn thing, and then I have to go. And I'm just like, I'm sick, because here I am starting 3 weeks in the mountains, some of the most awesome scenery some of the most awesome scenery I've ever seen in my life, and someplace I've certainly never been. And I had a whole crap ton of film that I was going to shoot up there, and now I can't even meter. The camera still works. I have a meter on my iPhone, so I can do that. It's just going to slow down my process, right? I'm not able to just rack off, and I'm going to have to take out the iPhone, do a meter reading. It's just going to make me slower. So we hike all the way up to base camp. It takes the better part of a day. Filming along the way, I'm carrying this super heavy cinema camera. Inside, I'm just like, crap, man, this sucks. We get up to base camp. Everybody's exhausted. I actually got food poisoning about this point. Ended up being violently sick for 2 days, coming out both ends, living in a tent, sub-zero temperatures at night. It was super fun. Then I started feeling better. I'm out there before the sun came up trying to take some pictures of the peaks, and just as the sun is just kissing the top of them as it's coming up, something pops. My lens stops adjusting. I can no longer adjust the aperture, and I look, and it's like frozen kind of in, I don't know, somewhere around f8 or something, and it won't adjust. So this is great. So my lens is broken. I can't adjust the aperture, and I don't have a meter in the camera. I don't even know what the lens is set at. I can't meter at all now. It's pretty much useless. Neither of them work. So I have to go strictly to the 15, and I'm like, great, I don't want to shoot this whole freaking trip in 15mm. I'm pretty bummed out at this point. About a day goes by, we're making the show, we're working, it's hard work, it's long days, and it's like, I think we're on a lunch break and we're back at base camp, and I hear my friend Allie yelling, "Staley! Staley!" And I'm like, what is going on? And I come out of the tent, and she's there with this guy. And he is holding this. My battery door and the 2 batteries. It seems back at the staging area, someone actually found it, and one of the locals remembered me searching around for it frantically. I don't even know how this is possible. They gave it to this guy who was bringing supplies up to base camp, and he found my friend Allie. Allie knew it was missing, and I got it back. All is well with the world. Now I can actually use my Summicron lens again, even though I can't adjust the f-stop. I can still adjust the shutter. I can, I can use it. I can use the meter. So we finished out the shoot. It was long, it was grueling, it was pretty awesome. It's one of the coolest jobs I ever had. Really, really great crew, really great team. Icing on the cake for me was this, and this is the last night of production, and I got to spend it alone at somewhere I didn't even check. I didn't have an altimeter, but I'm estimating this is somewhere between 16 and 17,000 feet. I slept up there by myself. Had some help with the local porters carrying up a cine camera, and that's a 1,000mm lens, and I camped out alone up there and got a bunch of shots by myself, and that was one of the coolest nights I've ever had on a job. And I'm like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this. And then we packed up, we went home. I sent the lens in and spent like $250 or something to have it repaired. There's just a little plastic gasket that had broken in there because it's really cold out. It was very sub-zero in the morning, and I think it just froze up and it snapped when I was adjusting it. But the lens has worked perfectly ever since. And since that trip, I feel like perhaps the lens was not calibrated properly. I'm not sure how this stuff works, but I feel like since I got that lens back from being repaired, I've had better luck focusing with the rangefinder. I don't know, coincidence, or did I just get better? I kind of think it was off a little bit. I don't know. I'm from Alaska, and I've worked there a ton. This is the island of Dutch Harbor. That's a World War II era bunker. Those were put in place during World War II when the Japanese occupied some of the Aleutian Islands. Yes, the Japanese occupied American soil for several years during World War II, and there were constant battles fought there on a daily basis during that time. And there's a brailer bag full of a Pelio crab. There's my old buddy Captain Wild Bill. There's my buddy Kelvon. And there's aerial camera guy Dave Arnold. He's one of the top aerial cinematographers in the world. There he is taking a picture from the air. Some beach scenes. That's on St. Paul Island, out in the Pribilof Islands. There's a dead fox. This is Kodak Ektar on St. Paul Island. I love those shots. Well, hey, there's Kelvon again. And there's the aerial team and the GSS crew. I love that shot. Some eagles, tons of eagles in Dutch Harbor. You guys know I like taking portraits, and that's the main thing I pack the M6 around for, is taking portraits of people that I meet. This is now, I'm working on this boat, and is the engineer, and he's the co-captain. He drives the boat when the main captain needs to sleep or whatever. He's a lifelong fisherman, and he's an awesome dude. He's very sweet. I don't know if I should tell you this. It's so effed up. It's only the internet, right? What the hell? All right, we're going in. He's, yes, a sweet man, awesome, full of stories, very warm. He's also filthy all the time, okay? Now, let me frame this for you. On a boat, everybody is working around the clock. They're working very hard. Meal times are family style, right? And there's a bunch of food on the table. Everybody sits down. We're having tacos or something. He comes out of the bathroom. Now, he's in the engine room. His hands are just black and greasy under the fingernails, and he's always cranking wrenches, changing oil, doing stuff down in the engine room. He's dirty, man. You don't have time to get fully clean. He comes out of the bathroom, sits down, filthy hands, prepares to make some tacos, reaches into a bag of shredded cheese, just bare hand, boom, grabs a handful, boom, onto his tacos. Somebody says, and you know, these are fishermen, they're used to some grossness, they're used to poor hygiene, they're used to rough conditions. Somebody says, didn't hear you wash your hands before you came out of the bathroom. You just reached right into that bag of cheese. Says, he says, my dick's not dirty. It's so gross. Yeah, that's boat life. That's why I don't like to do that anymore. About this time, I stopped eating anything on the boat that it was an open container that, you know, people could fit their hand into or reach into. Typically, I'd have cereal for breakfast because that's kind of all there was, but I would just basically take a couple boxes of cereal. I stashed them up in the wheelhouse in a cupboard where nobody else could get to them, and that was all I ate. Pretty gross. My dick's not dirty. Of course it's not. Here's a good story. I stopped into Salt Lake City to hang out with my friends Mark and Michael. We recorded a podcast, and then we went and got some supplies. And then... You might fall. I'm just over here defending analog.
No drug.
And Mark said, that rock has no power.
Like he's just totally enamored with the light itself.
I'm glad I could share that story. It's a good one. Over the years, I've worked in Alaska a lot. So I was doing this job in Nome. And Nome is up in northwestern Alaska on the edge of the Bering Sea. And I was up there for about a month in the fall a couple years ago. And I had a day off. And my friend Emily, who I was working alongside most days, was a local. And she invited me to go bouldering with her and a friend of hers. Now, Emily's a little bit of a rock climber. I'm a little bit of a rock climber. She brought along this friend of hers, Ian, who's a local and who's a rock climber, and knew this spot where you could actually go bouldering. It's pretty flat up there, but he knew a spot. So they invited me. Honestly, I really just wanted to take some pictures. And we hiked up this hillside, and you could see the Bering Sea in the background. It's a beautiful September afternoon. I put the 15 on, and we're kind of scouting the boulder, right? It's just this jumbled chunk of rocks just sticking up out of the tundra. Now, I was following Ian and following Emily. I had the M6 in my hand. I had the 15 on it. We're kind of hopping from boulder to boulder as we circumnavigate this big, large mass of rocks and kind of looking for route possibilities and bouldering possibilities on this rock. Again, it's all covered in moss and chassis, and I'm like, whatever, but I'm stoked to be outside and maybe taking some pictures. I'm behind everybody and we're going along and I'm stepping over some boulders and poof, all of a sudden my camera is ripped out of my hands. And what had happened is the strap, this is my fucking fault. Instead of having the strap over my shoulder or around my neck, I'm just holding the camera like this. The strap has caught on a jagged piece of rock, and as I was moving forward, it wasn't going anywhere and it jerked out of my hands. Camera jerks out of my hands, tumbles to the ground. All these jagged rocks, there's no soft edges. Boom, clang, boom, boom. Holy shit. I feel like I want to vomit. I jump down, pick it up, look at it. There was, somewhere here, there was like a little gouge in the leather where it had impacted a rock. Luckily, the glass on the lens wasn't impacted at all. The camera looked fine except for a little gouge in the leather here, which right now I don't even know where that was because I sort of smoothed it out and it's like it healed like a cybernetic organism or something. It's not, but somehow I can't find that wound. So I picked the camera up and I'm like, holy, I'd already taken a few shots, and I look and my heart just sinks. The rangefinder patch is misaligned. It's like lower than it needs to be, and now it still moves back and forth, but it's not lining up with the center little square image. And I'm like, crap. And I look and I'm, testing focus, and it's just misaligned horizontally. And I'm like, I think I took a shot and I wound it and it seemed okay. For some frickin' reason, I'm like, well, I only took 2 or 3 shots before I dropped it. I guess we'll waste those shots. And I opened it up, flashed the film, and just kind of looked inside, and just everything seemed to be okay. Closed it back up, wound it. I'm like, well, I guess I better roll off the rest of this film and just see what happens. And I don't know if the rangefinder is actually focusing properly, or if it's, if it's totally kaput. I'm particularly mortified because I'm going right from Nome to another job in a different part of Alaska. And then I'm flying home. I have a few weeks and I'm going to Europe for 2 months on vacation. And of course, this is the main camera that I want to take. I don't think there's going to be a fast enough turnaround that I can have it repaired, get it back before I go to Europe. So I just need to see if the focus is off or not. I did manage to get the film developed before I went to Europe. The focus looked fine and everything. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to get it repaired till after I get back. So what the heck? And I went to Europe, and honestly, it worked fine. The focus patch was just misaligned, but I could line up the image and just see the kind of 2 ghost images just not quite in alignment vertically, and it worked. And then I came back and I had like 3 days and I went back to Alaska to work again. That's my life. And then when I got back from that trip, I was able to have the thing repaired, and it's worked fine ever since. Okay, so there's a couple stories. Let me show you 4 of my absolute favorite shots of all time with the M6. Maybe with any camera. These are 4 photos that I just love. And this is the Bering Sea at sunrise. I had to time the roll of the boat and the rise of the waves. Man, it just worked. The color of the cotton candy clouds and that green Bering Sea. One of my all-time favorite shots. This is a juvenile orca Kodak Ektar, and we were on a long run, and a whole pod of orcas started traveling with the boat and coming out of the water and diving, and it was awesome. And I sat there and photographed them and watched them for about a half an hour. I'm stoked to have nailed this shot with the rangefinder. This is the Gothic Quarter in Barcelona, 15mm, Kodak T-Max 100. I just like the negative space. I like how the 15mm rendered it. I like those figures in the background. And it's such a cool location, such a cool city. And this might be my favorite shot ever with the M6. You guys know how I like portraits, and that's my friend Reagan Miller. We were going up to Griffith Park to get some shots way up at the top, but there was no parking. And so we turned around and we pulled off on the side of the road driving down, and right away a park ranger stopped behind us and yelled at us and told us we couldn't park there. But before we left, I just racked off a couple shots, and the flare and Reagan's pose, it just works for me. Kodak T-Max 100. I love that shot. I don't know if this is the best camera ever made. I think that'd be a silly thing to say about any camera. I wonder if anything I capture with this camera will last as long as those cave paintings in the Frank Church Wilderness, made by the Sheep-Eater tribe of Native Americans at least 200 years ago. The Sheep-Eaters inhabited that country for more than 3,000 years. How long has your family been around? And what will remain when you vanish into dust? Does it even matter? Something deep in our DNA compels us to record our experiences, pass on what we've learned, where we've been, what we have done, and why? So that we can evolve, so the next generations will know where to go, where not to go, what to do, what not to do. You know, for all our recording, I can't help feel that sometimes we're pretty piss poor at learning from the past. but that's just me. Well, if you've made it this far, I'm guessing you're a photographer or a storyteller, or you want to be. Don't worry about having the newest, coolest camera. Just use what you have. Make what you can, as well as you're able. I'm Ben Staley for Adventure in Art. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you on the next one.